Awesome. I see you. Are you ready for the live broadcast, which has already begun?
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll make sure it's recording. All right. Well, welcome, Learning How to Learn group. I think we had about 70 people RSVP'd for today's live broadcast. It's our second one we've done. And about a few thousand people will see it once it's recorded. So I'm so excited because all the time in the news we hear about headlines of artificial general intelligence, how we're going through this singularity of rapid change and how the future is going to change. And one thing that I think is rare that is going to happen, it seems like estimates are in decades. Many of the top artificial intelligence researchers agree, but what's happening right now is there's a lot of learning on that path towards artificial general intelligence that we can apply to our personal life. So Marek is one of the first people I'm talking to for us to go deeper, and that really fits in with the goal of this group of learning how to learn. Marek has been a very successful entrepreneur in Europe. He founded the Keen Software House, which is an independent game development studio. They sold over 2.4 million copies, and he's taken many of the proceeds he's earned from that company to endow his new company, Good AI, which I guess he's been not really new because he's been doing it for a long time, but with $10 million, there's over 20 researchers. They're based in Prague and doing amazing work. And if you go to their website, goodai.com, it's probably some of the best kind of explaining it for a general audience of artificial intelligence that I've seen and how to think about it. It's not using a new word every 2 seconds if you don't have experience with AI. So one of my favorite links that you have on your website is asking what intelligence is, Marek. And you give this definition of intelligence intelligence is a tool that an intelligent agent uses to learn, adapt, solve problems, and achieve goals in a dynamic, complex, uncertain environment. Intelligence achieves this by representing relevant parts of the environment in a simplified, abstract mental model where searching for optional solutions is faster and cheaper. And finally, you say intelligence has fewer resources than the environment, so the intelligent brain must use resources in a smart way. So there's a lot in those three sentences. So I was wondering if you could give kind of how your definition of intelligence has evolved as you've dived into this research.
Mm-hmm. So I have a much shorter and simpler definition. I would say that intelligence is a tool for searching for solutions to problems. And here the word search is important. Because if you already know a solution to some problem or to some task, then you just strictly execute that solution. You will do actions that will get you to your goal. But if you don't know how to solve it, then you will use intelligence to find the solution. And the solution can be in some kind of hypothesis space. So you have different hypotheses that can get you to the solution. So first, you need to be able to generate these hypotheses. That's one thing. Another is you need to be efficient at searching in this hypothesis space, of diversifying your search, trying different options, not just one, but different options. And also, as I said, narrowing this hypothesis space.
Yeah.
You cannot search it all, that's impossible because you have limited resources or you are bounded by your resources. So we need to be very efficient at searching. So this is intelligence for me. Again, it's a tool for searching for solutions to problems.
So is there a practical example where you've used this in your own life, where you kind of think about you're confronted with a problem and you go through this process of building a solution space, which is all the possible ways you could solve it, which theoretically is almost infinite, or is infinite, I guess. And then narrow it down to something that you feel like has the highest chance of working.
Yeah. So actually, there is one thing that is right at hand, and it's the development of general AI. That's the problem that we have right in front of us. We don't know how to solve it. So we are searching for the solution, and we can be using similar tricks or heuristics, how to narrow the search space, how to generate better hypotheses, how to search faster, how to diversify our search, and so on. So, for example, we are using these principles even in how we are managing our AGI development.
Right, it's very meta. The principles you learn that you're teaching the AI, you're also kind of teaching yourself to teach the AI.
Yes, and also to be teaching myself and ourselves how to be searching for this AI, what kind of people should be working on this problem, for example. If it's better for us to diversify, in a wide direction, or rather go deeply into the problems, and so on. I could continue. So basically, we are in the same problem, as this intelligent agent.
Okay, so that's a good one. Although it's a very complex one compared to someone's day to day. But so you have this problem that has never been solved by humanity. So you're kind of trying to do a once in a universe type of problem that you're trying to solve, and that you've never done. So you're trying to think about how to narrow down. How do you even begin in that? Because you can't really turn to anyone. There's so many different ways it could be done. You have limited knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Like you cannot open a book and just read the solution, right? Like you can do something like this with many other things. You can read a recipe, by just reading cookbook and you have it. But if you want to invent a new recipe, you actually need to invent something new, put new things together. And so with developing general AI, we are in this kind of situation that we need to invent the solution. And this also means that we need to be generating hypotheses that are getting us closer to the solution. And because there is not a guideline how to develop general AI, there is no manual or guidelines, nothing. We can only be searching for some meta patterns from other domains, how to do this thing. So I'm using basically everything I learned throughout my life. And as always, or one of the tricks that I'm using is that when I'm solving something, I'm trying to not just solve that one particular thing, but I'm trying to find some meta pattern that's behind the solution, that's behind how I discovered the solution, and so on. And so I'm looking for different meta patterns that can help us to search for general AI more efficiently.
And so when you say meta pattern, are you kind of saying, let's say, general problem solving techniques? Is that another word?
So I would say specific pattern would be put money into this company and it will generate you this much, every year or something like this. But meta pattern would be how to even think about this problem, how to think about where actually to put money if it is efficient and so on. So basically meta pattern is also something that will work over wider range of problems and domains, something that will not work in just one very specific case.
Right.
For example, I invested into this company and it was making money for 5 years. So I will repeat this until end of my life. That's not going to work probably after 10 years or something like this. But if you discover what I call meta pattern, that would be something like how to pick where to invest, even though the situation and the world situation is changing all the time. So meta pattern could be something that can capture, this meta evolution.
So let's just take it down to let's say somebody's watching this, they want to start a business and they don't know what business to start. That's just something I hear a lot. And so if you were doing it, you would start off by thinking about, okay, there's a million types of businesses I could start. I could do things that have been done before. It could be in different industries. It could be really big. I could bootstrap it. So lots of different methods. So you would start off on just creating hypotheses based on your existing knowledge. Although I guess you're in a domain but if somebody were starting a business, other people have been successful, so you would more go towards guided learning.
Yeah, that's one option. But then you're also in a risk that you will be copying strategies that already worked and may not work in the future. Or maybe they worked only in their circumstances, but will not work in yours, and so on. So if you find, or if you are kind of lucky or smart to find this meta pattern, then you can have a strategy that will work across multiple different strategies. And
right.
what I'm trying to find, like in basically everything that I'm doing. So for example, let's say that I have a problem with specific person and I can either solve it with him, right there, like that's specific case, or I can be thinking about some meta pattern, like what is causing, that there is actually this problem, how to avoid that problem even in the future with maybe other people and so on. So like I'm always trying to optimize.
Right.
Or even like optimize the optimization process.
Right. I was watching a video and reading about Doug Engelbart. He passed away a few years ago, but he created the mouse, and he created one of the first documents on a theory of augmented intelligence. But he has I don't know if you've seen it, the ABC method. So with companies, they have a process A, which is creating the product. Then they have a process B for improving the product. And then you want a C, which is a process for improving the overall process. So it sounds like what you're talking about is similar to maybe what Elon Musk talks about with first principles, is that you're taking knowledge out of specific context. Okay, this works in just this context, and you're creating a generalized version that can work in all contexts or many contexts throughout many different time periods. Is that accurate? So you're creating maybe a more robust form of knowledge.
Yeah, it's more robust, and it should be, or what I'm aiming for, better at adapting to changing environment, changing conditions. And of course, the tricky part is like, what are the relevant part of this, pattern or this model? That's the tricky part. But then again, the thing is that, and we will get to this, but if you want to be better at adapting to like changes and novel problems, novel tasks, one of the things or tricks that we can use is actually to adapt our adaptation strategy, and
right
adaptation and so on. So and because we are going to a kind of future where things will be changing faster and faster and faster, I think, and this is a different topic, but I think it will be really an era of generalists.
Right.
Actually good at adapting to different conditions, different, like as you're saying, take out the context and use your knowledge in different contexts and so on. So, yeah.
And in your documents on your website, you talk about a whole set of skills that you want to teach the artificial general intelligence. And you have 3 core intrinsic skills. You talk about guided learning, gradual learning, and learning to learn. So I thought when I first came across you when I saw what you did an interview previously, and then I went to your website, and the gradual learning concept had a really big impact on me. So my quick understanding of it is that when you're going into a new area, one of the mistakes that people make is they try to go at kind of more advanced level, and they try to go faster almost, where a better thing to do in learning anything is to really focus on the fundamentals first, master the deepest level of the fundamentals, then learn the next level. That gives you a strong foundation to learn the next level. So it's like when the child is learning to read, first they learn to detect different edges and distinctions, and they can notice different letters, then words, then sentences, then ideas. How would you describe gradual learning? Why is it so important, and how do you use it in your life?
Mm-hmm. So what you said is a good description, and I would add to it a few things. So actually, I think that even the entire universe is running some kind of gradual process or gradual learning. That in the beginning of the universe, very simple structures created structures that were better at creating even better structures, and so on.
Right.
Way how to look on this is that the structures were searching new structures that will be better at searching new structures, and so on. And it was some kind of gradual or maybe even exponential process. So with better searching structures, they will find even better searching structures. And by better, I mean more efficient, needing less resources, increasing the probability that they will actually find a solution, and so on. So another comparison can be that imagine that there is a child that was just born and you wanted to drive a car, for example. And now think about how many hypotheses the child would need to generate and get it right, in that moment, if it will need to have all the motoric skills and navigation and maybe social skills and all these things needed to actually drive a car, safely and so on. And the amount of hypotheses the child would have to generate is not infinite, but it would be really a huge number. And so just by brute forcing, the child would need to be searching probably through trillions and trillions of hypotheses, and there's just not enough time,
Right. And brute forcing, you mean just pure trial and error, blinded, you're not blind trial and error.
Yeah. And but with gradual process, you can actually hack this. And by this, I mean that the child would first learn very simple skills, like you said, detecting some edges, recognizing what is around, and learning this human development skill set, and then building a driver skill set on top of this. And in each stage, and just for simplification, I'm using stage because it can be really continuous process. So at each stage, the child just has to generate hypotheses that are just slightly above its current skill set. So it's not impossible for the child to discover the new set of skills. And by gradually accumulating one skill after another, the child becomes better at actually learning the final skill needed to drive the car. This is the trick. That if you compare these two methods of learning, first will be trial and error brute forcing, and the other is gradually accumulating one thing after another, also combined with guided learning, because the child will learn from parents and other people. The child can actually find a solution or learn to drive a car in a reasonable amount of time. But contrary to this, for example, if the child was on an island and there was no another person, the child would have to invent, automobiles, driving, and basically everything. And again, human lifetime would not be sufficient for something.
Right.
So this gradual accumulation, this is actually the most important thing for me, that you are building new building blocks on top of already acquired building blocks, and therefore making the learning and search more efficient in each iteration.
Yeah, and there's a few implications of that I feel I've been noticed for myself. One is sometimes if you focus on learning too quickly, like, okay, I want to accomplish X by XYZ time, you kind of skip over the fundamentals. So it's led to me being a little bit more patient just with this idea of, okay, I'm investing in this process of gradual learning. But one of the challenges, I think, of gradual learning in just our day-to-day life is the curse of knowledge, is that anytime let's say you ask someone how to drive as a good example, as you become an expert, you learn something, and then at first you do it deliberately, but then it becomes automated. And then when you ask somebody, how do you drive? You're just like, well, I kind of just sit in the car, I turn the steering wheel. So, and experts tend to give very generalized knowledge, and they forgot about the building blocks. When you're going into a new domain, I guess in school, I'll also say that, our whole curriculum is laid out for us. So it's a lot more natural when we're in school because it's already gradual, but when we're adults, it's not laid out. How do you go about dividing big new areas into the most simple components?
This is a good question. Well, I think it's also some kind of exploration process. So you cannot just start exploiting your existing, knowledge or skill set. You need to be exploring. So sometimes you try random stuff. Sometimes you are exploiting the knowledge you already have and go in more, a way where you learn, you use what you already learned. But as I said, you also need to be exploring and adding some kind of randomness to the process. And by randomness, I mean sometimes even letting things go, and just dreaming and trying some stuff, or talking with sometimes random people, or even people who may seem like they're unfit for this kind of domain, but actually they can give some really strange angle of how to look on things, and so on. And then as time goes, the problem becomes more and more clear. But still, I'm trying to search for these first principles. This is very important. That I don't like just memorizing something. Usually I remember something when I remember how to create it or how it works. Not just by memorizing like one thing after another, but by understanding how it was created, how it emerged, and then I can actually understand that thing. So it's this process, this big picture connected with very specific, narrow way of thinking, random exploration, but also exploitation of your existing knowledge base. And then as you go, you start to understand better and better, and then you can start solving it.
Yeah, there seems to be, so yeah, it's interesting is you're on a search for these first principles. It seems like there's more awareness of the value of doing this in popular culture a little bit, with Elon Musk talking about first principles. Ray Dalio just wrote a book on principles. This is really a lifelong thing that it takes. And I was curious if there's any books or resources that you found helpful just on first principles and that kind of thinking, on how to be that kind of generalist thinker, problem solver.
Probably not a book, because I heard the term first principles just a couple years ago, and it was probably connected to Elon Musk, but I was using this somehow subconsciously even before, like throughout my life. And maybe it's connected to me being a guy who likes to reinvent the wheel, because when I started programming as a child, I didn't really have that much books. In the beginning, later I had, of course, but in the beginning I didn't have, and there wasn't internet and all these things. So I had to invent, like all the algorithms and so on. And this led me to understand the things from first principle perspective. And it also helped me to become better at inventing things instead of just learning from others how to do them. And this is another topic that I think is a very interesting for discussion. And so I kind of got lucky in this, that from the beginning of my programmer's career, I was like first principle kind of guy. It was just natural to me.
How do you think about invention versus learning? Because, give the example of the car, it would be the most foolish thing ever to try to, if you're on an island, to try to reinvent the car from scratch. Oh, there's a great TED video about someone who wanted to create a toaster that based on they couldn't use any tool at all to do it. And it's a really funny search about him going to different parts of the world to find these materials and then try to, create the tools that would then create a toaster. And, you have to watch the video to see what happened. So, on the one hand, there's a school of thought of just, okay, you were young, you didn't know how to learn. So, it's rather than reading, you could have just learned faster from experts, but instead you create a whole new system for first principles. How do you square that away of when to balance it?
Yeah. So first, I want to also emphasize that I wasn't just I wasn't completely ignoring advices from books or other people. I think it's very important also to use this, because it's also part of this gradual learning that I am building on building blocks invented by other people. But I'm also very open to just throw away some of these blocks and reinvent them myself. And I think the advantage, and why I'm always inclined to do this, is that you actually improve your skill of invention or inventor skill, because it's a zero-sum game. Imagine that you will be spending your entire day by learning only what other people already invented and then just re-implementing it, And okay, so we will become better, or we will become good at re-implementing other people's inventions. But if you will spend your days inventing new stuff, the skills that are relevant for inventing new stuff, they will become stronger in you. And then you will just become better inventor. And this was important for me. But again, of course, you need practical and pragmatic. So it's not like I'm trying to reinvent computers, internet, electricity. I'm not crazy. So
right.
I need to be careful about where to reinvent the wheel and where to just leave it as it is, and so on. And but I still think that if we want to invent something as new as general AI, or even, for example, video games, you don't want to just invent a game that is a clone of some previous game. You actually want to invent something new that hasn't been here before. So you need to you need to leave this safe route where other people already were, and just go like where your heart is taking you. And here the skills of like inventor skills are useful on this path, not the reimplementator kind of skill.
And a few people have been asking questions. They're good questions for the artificial intelligence one. There's so many videos already on that online in general. I'm kind of avoiding those and just taking it more towards learning. I'm switching gears a little bit here towards goal setting. I think the goal setting is really interesting for artificial intelligence. And one popular example of AI safety in this is the paperclip problem. That let's say you have a goal, let's say you design an artificial general intelligence that has the goal of maximizing the number of paper clips made. Maybe at first it's doing great. It's designing paper clips cheaper and cheaper than you ever could. But then it starts using more and more resources, and eventually it uses all the resources of the earth just to maximize the number of paper clips. And it's kind of just a cautionary tale that in setting goals, you have to set other parameters, or you could actually end up being somewhere where you don't really want to be unintentionally. And I kind of think about it in the world when you think about politics or business. In a way, that's what happens sometimes with, let's say, business. You have it institutionalized to be short-term profit seeking, but that might end up taking us farther than where we want to be. So I was just curious if any of that, your research on artificial intelligence, has influenced how you think about goal setting for your own life, because that's one of the most important things we could do in life is determine what's most important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very relevant. So first, I will start with this paperclip maximizer example. I actually kind of don't like that example. And I will explain why. I think it's a good example when you want to study some extreme situation. And so you have really some system that is trying to optimize one variable, and while completely ignoring all the other variables like happiness of the people and so on, because it's trying just to maximize the number of paper clips. But what I think is missing in this example is how that AI system would acquire such goal or such kind of value system, and I think this is important, and this is where I will continue. So we people, and I think this will be same for AI, we are kind of like a repertoire of skills or repertoire of biases or values or goals or whatever we call it, so basically repertoire of things that we are doing or things that we strive for, want to achieve, and so on. And if you really created a system that would just try to maximize amount of paper clips and will ignore all the other human values, then it would end up really bad for us, just
right.
Like the example. But if we design a system that will have same set of human values or biases, positive or negative, same understanding about the world as we have, at least some kind of average consensus, like standard law, understanding of humans, society, values, goals, then I think this wouldn't happen. So how I'm thinking about this myself, I actually think that the universe and intelligence and human society and future AGI, it's kind of all connected and more or less one thing. And as I said in the beginning, I think it all started in the beginning of the universe, where some structures, some simple particles were forming more complex structures that were better at finding better structures and so on. And so in this process, first, of course, because there was not life, just some like not living matter, it took billions of years to kind of invent or discover galaxies, planets, and these things. But since there were these structures, or from that moment there were these structures, it was much easier for the universe to discover, for example, life. And with life, simple single-cellular life, you could get multicellular and then intelligent life and so on. And then suddenly in last 200 years, we got industrial revolution and things are speeding up even more. And with AGI, they will go even much more faster. And so why I'm saying this, because this entire process, you can look on it as universe or part of the universe that is here on Earth was acquiring some kind of biases or skills or values. Some of them are encoded in our DNA, some of them are encoded in physicals around us, some of them are encoded as memes in society or social values, ethics, laws, or even economic situations and all these things. And we are just like accumulating all these biases.
Right.
All our decisions, everything we do is based on all the biases that we accumulated. And next thing is that even the new values or the new biases that we will acquire in the future will somehow come from the biases that we already acquired.
So you're saying there's a natural gradual, the values itself, there's the same evolutionary process.
Yeah. So it's like a snowball process. So we are just snowballing one value after another. Of course, there are forces that come externally to this. Like if, for example, there is a nation that is stronger than me, then it doesn't matter what are my values. Like they will just prevail. And so, but still, we as independent agents or autonomous agents, we tend to propagate our current values to the next generation of ourselves, or to our children and so on. And so even we as people, I think we will want to propagate our value system to AGI systems. And we'll try to do it as precisely as possible. Like, I cannot think about scenario other than just pure mistake. Why would I create something like paperclip maximizer? It's just not possible. Of course, other than mistake. And this is actually a very important topic because an error or computers are like not that secure as we would like. And if you have same security issues as we have with computer systems, with AGI, that will be really a big problem. But that's more like a development or engineering issue. So
how would you, so I understand kind of the first principles perspective you're talking about, this evolution of our values based on all these different things of DNA, brain, social, and they're building on each other. How do you then think about developing your own values and your goals?
Yeah. This is
based on that.
Okay. Yeah, good question. So basically, I am like me myself. I am a repertoire of my values, and they are trying to propagate themselves to the next version. And I'm trying to identify what they are, and I can do this by retrospection. Really thinking what is important for me, what is not, and so on. And I think one of the things is that these values, they and me, they want to propagate. So survival is really important. But there are probably still other things that may be even more important than survival. But you never know until you get to that situation, of course. So for me, and this is also the reason why I'm building or trying to build general AI, is that I'm very curious, what will be the next years or decades or centuries. And one way how I can increase the probability that I will be able to fulfill these goals of mine is survival and also development of AGI, because with AGI I can speed up the search. And so that's pretty much it.
So obviously the value is based on survival, but for you're talking about for artificial and general intelligence, you're propagating this process of evolution and also curiosity as a guiding value.
And also, like in my game studio, actually, we have this like motto, and it's need to create. So this is also very important value for me, that I have need to create stuff and invent stuff. And so one reason why I'm doing general AI is also that I want to be creating stuff, not just surviving.
Yeah, I feel like this is, I feel like I tended to go down the rabbit hole there, but I feel like it's interesting of whether there's universal values or, you think about curiosity or need to create.
This is actually a really good question. And we are also working on this. And basically the question is like, what is the best value system that could be,
Right.
Like if there will be some kind of competition between value systems, which one would you choose, and so on. And the best answer I have for this, I think, is a system that is best at surviving and also best at propagating itself.
Which is basically kind of the universe we have.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, natural selection, basically.
Right.
natural selection of memes or ideas.
Yeah. All right, I'm going through here. Let me touch base with the group. Let me just see. Scott Zimmerman, how do you apply this knowledge of acquiring knowledge to an individual who either resists or is incapable of integrating these principles into their thinking pattern? The Dunning-Kruger effect, where stupid people cannot understand that they're stupid. How do you approach implementing changes?
Yeah. So during my career, I was like trying different things, of course. Sometimes I tried to change some people, like I was giving them not 1 or 2 chances, but like 1,000 chances. But again, I learned that with some people, it's better to just let them go their way, and not really try to change them or try to talk to them or something like this. And again, you can see this as they have some value system, I have some value system, and our values are incompatible, so there is not aligned. So there is very small chance that we will be able to do something useful together. So I think it's better just not try. So this is my answer, like really don't try, and rather invest the energy into finding people who are aligned with your values.
All right, we got another question from Rishi Daryani. This is a technical question, but probably a lot of people have it. It's just how do you I'll just generalize it into sorry, Rishi, I'm going to generalize a little bit, but he says, I have a technical question. Sorry if it's not an appropriate question for this broadcast. I'm a full stack software engineer, mostly in the background of e-commerce web development for 10, 15 years. My goal is to dive into AI from a programming perspective. I think the role of, so do you have any roles? I'm just going to make it general there. So I guess I'm going to generalize it to say, if you're someone who sees all these headlines about artificial intelligence and you want to get a deeper understanding of it, how do you do that? He asked about it for software engineering, but I'm just going to make it more general.
Yeah, so basically it's about like what are the sources for this, and I have some list here. So for example, recently I discovered a YouTube channel called 2 Minute Papers, and in just 2 minutes they cover some topic from deep learning or AI. So it's like really good to get some brief introduction to this, and then
that's awesome.
I also think that OpenAI has good blog and good education sources, tutorials and things like that, how to get into AI and deep learning and so on. So there is just one thing that depending on if person is interested in narrow AI, like using current AI algorithms to solve some very specific problem today versus working on general AI that actually should be able to solve tasks that even its author doesn't know what those tasks will be. So the person who like fits this first category, narrow AI, can be studying deep learning. I think it's very powerful these days. The person who wants to work on general AI should understand deep learning and understand how it can be used to discover, invent general AI architectures, but should not be focusing himself too much just on narrow AI solutions. So I would say OpenAI has a good resources, and then of course they are everywhere. Like there are online courses for deep learning and AI, and I think people can like find so much valuable resources.
And we've dived deep into kind of how you represent problems as solution spaces, and you think about the best heuristics or algorithms or biases to create that solution space and then to search it. We've talked about first principles and gradual learning. And one of the other core principles you talked about is guided learning. How have you applied that to your life? So yeah, maybe you could go into a little bit about what guided learning is, and then how, on a concrete level, do you think about that in your life?
Mm-hmm. So, for example, one of the things is that I'm trying to, I'm also really interested in self-improvement, or even like recursive self-improvement, and even on myself. So, of course, I cannot change my hardware, like I cannot change my biology and things like this, but I can change things on the, let's call it like software level, like things I'm using, doing, and so on. And this leads me to actually trying to not just become better, but actually become better at becoming better. And again, maybe this is too general, so I will
that's great.
Some more specific things. So one of the things is that I'm trying to leverage as much as possible. So to achieve as much as possible with as little as possible. So for example, if I'm doing something and I feel that I'm probably brute forcing the thing because there is probably some better solution that will get me to the solution with very few resources, then I will be rather searching for this more efficient solution. Or another thing, and actually this is, for me, it's an old thing, but I kind of forgot about it, is focus. And it's like learn to say no to many things. And I was doing this in my most productive career or like era, they just like ignore everything and focus just on one thing and get it done, get it really well. And then as my teams, like more people and so on, more distractions. So I'm getting back to this, like, stop many things, stop many projects, have less people and do just less things, but do them really well. So focus, no distractions, and like really start thinking about what I should not be doing, like actively, like don't do things.
Cool.
And of course, there are many other things like this, self-development tricks and so on.
And this is going back to the guided learning. I'll give you one example I thought was really interesting. Have you read the Ray Dalio book, Principles?
Probably not.
That was, do you know who Ray Dalio is?
No.
He's an American investor, billionaire. He has the largest hedge fund in the world. He just wrote this book called Principles. And one of the reasons they've been successful is because he has a process for investing, and he has this for people where you do the investing, but then you basically, as you're going along, like yourself, develop principles. And then he's taken the next step of putting the principles into an artificial intelligence or into some sort of decision-making tool. And then he uses past historical data and then runs the principles in that to see how effective they would have been in the past to determine how they would be in the future. So I thought that was really interesting. So that in life, we're not just getting the value of what we do, but we're learning first principles, and we're building this kind of software in the future that you could use. And his company recently hired the founder of IBM Watson for their learning. But so that's just one example of a creative way of applying the first principles. Is there any way that you think about, okay, you have these first principles in your head, how you make sure you apply them systematically in your life?
Well, just think about them and apply them, and then also do retrospection and think about where the moments where you should have applied them but didn't, or what worked, what didn't work, and try to find this meta layer, not just like specific things, but the meta level. And
do you have is it kind of informal retrospection that you just naturally built into your day? Is it structured where at the end of every meeting you have something, or?
It's something in between. Like I'm type of person who is, when I'm not doing something specific, when I'm just like, sitting, then I'm basically running this retrospective process, or maybe like the opposite of retrospective, like I'm looking to the future. So, and thinking, this is the more random, unguided process where my thoughts just get me, where they want. But I'm also using different tools. For example, one is that I'm reading a book or an article, for example, like your articles. And while I'm reading them, they are guiding my thought process, and they can lead me to see something. Because if I will be just using my brain to invent new things, it will get me only, to the cone of possible ideas of my brain. But when I will be using, let's call it like brain of other people for articles, books, or discussions with them, it can get me also somewhere else. So I'm also using this.
But how do you do that on a more concrete level?
Well, when I feel like I want to do it, I will just start reading, something. For example, when I want to like have a rest, for a while and stop thinking or so. I'll just be reading something and this will get me somewhere. And there are so many interesting articles these days. I don't even think I need to have some structure in this. It's just like sometimes it's actually good to do this random exploration. But I have, maybe this is a better answer. I also have different notepads or documents where I'm writing these guidelines for myself when I find something interesting. And I also have, it's more of them because sometimes I don't read them again and then I can't do them from over. But I have some documents that I call Marek's life guidelines, where I'm trying to find the most important things, and then they grow. So it's hard to say which is the most important if it's 10 pages. But I'm trying to, in these life guides, trying to identify what are the most important, what are those that I should be doing every day, not forgetting about them, and so on. And so I'm always also getting back to my notes and trying to remember what was the most relevant thing I should be focusing on and so on. And also what I think is very good is I'm listening to various videos or recordings where some people are talking about motivational stuff, and again, YouTube is full of these things. And one example can be, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a talk to some students and he's talking about, I think, 7 or 8 good advices for young people, or Steve Jobs and many other people. So I'm listening to these things just to remember something. And it's actually funny that as time goes, I tend to see new and new stuff in all these things.
Right.
You hear it when you are 20, and then you hear it when you are 30, and you see that one advice in much fuller spectrum. You see much more in it, than you saw when you were younger and didn't know that much about the world. So I'm using unstructured process, but also very structured process.
Yeah, and for the life guide sound really interesting. I have a process where I create for mental models and first principles. I've identified that as a really important area. So I have create, let's say 30-page on average documents for each of the top mental models. I have about 50 so far. But I like the idea of even consolidating that into one overall document. Is that document kind of informal where you're keeping a list of things, or is it, and you're constantly adding to it, or is there a certain structure if you're recommending this to other people that you'd recommend?
It's kind of messy, because when I get some idea or some new thing that I want to put on this list, I don't really try to polish it, and put it in nice place and reformat it and so on. So it's kind of messy document, but there are interesting life advices, from myself to myself. And I was actually using it even on our company retreats to show this, of course, in a much more structured and polished way to my colleagues and teach them something and basically get them on this self-development way. So I already use it, and I'm actually using when I'm mentoring my team guys and so on. I'm using these things to go over specific situations and then discuss them and so on.
And out of curiosity, what are some of the top things that you've, out of all your entire life, that you have at the top of that document that you keep revisiting the most?
Well, for example, one thing is that I want to start the day with the most relevant thing. So not start the day with checking email or Twitter or Facebook or news or something like this, but actually jumping on what is the most relevant thing. And funny thing is that I was doing this even when I was a child, because for some reason it's quite logical to start with this, because the thing that you do as first thing you do in the morning will kind of prime you for the entire day. So if you start the day with watching TV shows, for example, then you will be more likely to watch a second TV show, third TV show, and so on. But if you start the day with something hard, unpleasant, and but also relevant to your long-term goals, then you are more likely to stay in that mindset and continue. As 1 hour go, after another hour, you are more likely to stay there. So jumping on what is the most important and relevant thing, I think that's one thing that has been on this list all the time. And I would say that is one of the most relevant.
That's great.
Another is this focus, that like learn to say no to 1,000 great ideas, 1,000 different things. I think this is very important. And we need to remind this to ourselves, like even myself and to my team guys and everywhere, because like people usually say yes because they want to be nice, or they just don't want to lose that opportunity and so on. And even I need to say this to myself, because every day I got million new ideas for games or AI or this or that, and I just cannot do all of them. If I want to do something spectacular, I need to do just one thing at least for a couple of weeks until I can get it to perfection, or at least I feel like it's perfect. So one thing at a time. This is also very, very important for me. Like, for example, right now it's the game studio that these weeks I'm focusing on our games and just pushing things forward, and I'm really liking what I see. So it's good. When I was distracted and focused on like 20 different things, I also don't feel very good about it, because then I don't feel like I'm giving enough attention to each of these individual things, and I just feel like I'm slacking it a little bit. So when I focus on one thing and get it done really well, that's when I'm happy. And what else? For example, if someone would ask me what I think is the most important characteristic of a person, or like a personal attribute, I would say that it's grit or resilience.
It's what?
Grit.
Greed?
Grit. No, not greed.
Oh, grit. Oh, grit.
Some kind of good grit can be good, of course.
Yeah.
Grit, I mean, this resilience, endurance, that when you want to achieve something, you will just achieve it no matter what it costs or how much it hurts. You will just achieve it. And I think this is where successful people are separated from less successful. That successful people, they just go even if they cannot, or they don't want, they want to do other things. But for some reason, this one goal is for them more important than, like turning it off or watching TV or just going out and, like ignoring the goal. So this grit or resilience, I think that's the most important thing. And I don't know if it can be learned, because if someone is born as a lazy person, then he will probably just like recursively improving his laziness and becoming more and more lazy. But I think there is also a chance that if someone realizes that, okay, I'm lazy and I feel lazy all the time, but I don't want to be lazy, I really want to do something with my laziness, and he will start working on this, then I think he can spiral out from his lazy starts. So, I'm not sure if grit and resilience can be learned, but I think people who already have something can recursively self-improve their resilience to much higher levels.
And you talked about this idea of fixed. Sometimes we might have certain things or not when we're born. And I think about the 20th century. We had this idea of IQ, and often we think about people's IQ as fixed, or you can't really improve it that much. And we think about there's a form of intelligence that predicts a lot about your future. One of my pet hypotheses is that now that we have mental tools, let's count mental tools as first principles, using those, software tools, physical tools, we're really able to augment our intelligence. If somebody understands Google and how to search better than other people, they can suddenly get an information advantage compared to other people, for example. Or if they have understanding of data science, maybe they can get a algorithm advantage. And so I was just curious, what do you feel, have you thought about augmented intelligence and IQ being more important than IQ kind of in the 20th century as we go on this path to artificial general intelligence and merging with machines software?
Yeah. Also, this is a good question. So I think IQ tests are kind of irrelevant for me because they basically just test performance on a very specific tasks,
They're
and
not generalizable. I guess
they,
that's
they
what
are
we
not
are led to believe.
they are not generalizable. Like there is definitely correlation between how good you do on IQ tests versus how kind of smart you are, or like how you can learn new things and so on. But it's not one to one. And so again, someone can actually train himself to solve IQ tests really well, even though just prepare for the IQ tests and then solve them, like with IQ 150 or something like this.
I
Even
saw
though,
that. Like one guy did it like a million, like dozens of times. I got an IQ of like 190 or something.
yeah, and the thing is that this doesn't say nothing about your ability to adapt to novel tasks, when they come. And what I think this is the most important skill. So, for example, if I will have AGI agent, some AGI system, I will not be interested how it's performing on existing tasks, how it's solving like this math problem, that math problem. That's absolutely irrelevant for me. I would be actually irrelevant how fast it learns new problems. This will be the performance that I will be looking on. And IQ tests cannot test this. So, or they are not that good on this.
So it's
And
almost like a Warren Buffett kind of compounding interest, long-term perspective that you view large part of intelligence as your speed of improvement.
yes. Not your current skill set, but how efficient, how fast you are at acquiring new skill set. Of course, even the first one is useful, like for practical purposes. But in the world that we are living, and the world as it is changing, I think the ability to adapt fast to novel tasks will be relevant. So yeah, and then the intelligence augmentation, like you can be doing this, doing it using this soft, using soft methods like for example, learning how to use Google or learning mental models and things like this. And we are like, I think smart people are trying to do this.
Yeah.
Then I think next extension or upgrade to this can be actually AGI. And so I don't see AGI as an AI that will replace us, something that we'll create and then we will stay stupid humans as we are, and the AGI will be super smart and doing these very interesting things. Actually, I see AGI as augmentation of us. So for me, it will be just like a car or like glasses or like a computer. It's kind of like part of my body. Even you can think about this like this about a car. Like you're just augmenting your body with the car so that you can drive faster.
Right.
And or glasses, so we can see even though your eyes are not working properly and so on. Or using, for example, pen and paper to remember more things. Again, it's some kind of augmentation. And so I'm thinking, or like I'm viewing AGI as the same tool, just of course different type,
right.
but it's same kind of tool that I would like to augment my own intelligence, my own memory, and ability to learn, and and all these things.
And you spend a lot of time in the future and thinking about general intelligence, but it feels like, and a lot of our AGI researchers say, I forget what numbers, let's say 30 to 40 years with a 90% confidence interval or something like that. But, there's a lot of incremental steps that will happen between now and that happening, where the tools will become better and better. Let's say, Google now, but maybe in the future it'll be this other tool in 1 year or 2 years. Is there a way that you think about how people can? Well, another thing is that the number of tools and tool categories are exploding. So it's just even hard to keep track of all the apps that we could use on different platforms, like Gmail shortcuts, Google Chrome shortcuts, apps for your phone, apps for virtual reality. So it's hard to keep track of all the things we could augment ourselves with. So in between now and artificial general intelligence, are there any first principles or hacks you have around how to augment yourself most effectively and increase your smartness?
Some of these life hacks that we discussed, And regarding the tools or like some software applications and things like this, I don't have any specific, like as you said, Gmail or like, useful things that are usually intuitive and easy to use and that have some like, that are not overcomplicated. And yeah, so again, the life hacks and for example, another thing, how I can augment myself and I'm still not able to master that thing is to actually how to scale teams in my company. So for example, I'm okay at programming myself. And when I have a team of 10 people that I can manage and discuss and understand them and so on, I'm also good at this. But if it becomes team of 50 people, it's madness. And so, for example, I don't know how to go beyond this level while still feeling that it's efficient. We are achieving the goals that I want to be achieving and not some other goals, and so on. So one skill that I would like to master in coming years is how to be able to scale, my teams to more than 50 or 100 people, and still feel like I'm in control and it's my vision and so on. So, and plus that we are also efficient. So. And I don't know how to do this, but I think that if I will be able to master this skill, then I can be accelerating much more faster.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Marek, thank you so much for being on this broadcast and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
One of the things that I talked to your team earlier, and you're talking about the AI challenge that you have going on. Do you want to talk about that briefly and let people know about it? I'm trying to pull up the link here to put in the chat.
Good. We have this general AI challenge, and it's a multi-year challenge where there will be different rounds. We already had one round. It was focusing on gradual learning, where people, the participants, had to program AI agent that was able to learn through this gradual curriculum. So basically, the agent was supposed to learn to solve some task on which it learned some skill and then use this skill to learn the next task more efficiently. So basically, if the agent is not learning in a gradual manner, the agent shouldn't be able to solve the last task because it will be just like almost impossible to find a solution. So this round is already over. We had some winners, and one of them was actually NASA astronaut, so it was funny.
Wow.
And we are preparing a new round. We will also repeat this gradual round again, but we're also preparing a round from different category, and this one is called AI race avoidance. That's a working title. Maybe we will change it. And here the thing is about start to discussing and proposing some solutions that can help us mitigate this potential AI race, so that it doesn't become a race where it's winner take all and then so on. So basically to better understand race dynamics, value propagation, value alignment of different actors and all these things. It's very interesting because it will be possible to use it also in other domains than just AI race. But in AI race, it's more accentuated because there is this possibility that once you develop a recursively self-improving system, it can just go on and go on and go on, and may not need capital or labor, for self-improvement. So it's something new, something different than what we had here. So that's why it's even more important to start looking on solutions before it's either late or because right now it's probably too soon to start worrying about these things, but sometimes it's better to start sooner than later.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is awesome. And I put a link to it here on the chat, the general-ai-challenge.org. And so you can be involved at the programming level, but you can also engage your community of universities and research institutes, suggest future rounds and milestones. If your company, there's opportunity for hardware partnerships, media partnerships, just getting this from your website, providing judging support. But artificial intelligence is a topic that we all need to have an understanding of. We don't need to be all programmers, but at least I think it's good to have first principles. And it's a hard topic to learn about. I've done a lot of reading and purchased different books, and you just jump in and it's like you're really in a whole new language. And I feel like you guys have some of the best resources on the internet that just really break it down. So I put down a link in the chat to your page on what is intelligence, and then a link to your paper, and that was called A Framework for Searching for General Artificial Intelligence. So check out those resources, and thank you again, Marek, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.